Jane's Loudmouth. Story by Rachna Gilmore. Illustrations by Kimberly Hart. At the birthday party, Jane ate fudge and cake and ice cream, and gumdrops and suckers and caramel candy, and cookies and jelly beans and licorice. When she couldn't possibly eat another bite, she popped another hunk of fudge into her mouth and slowly sucked on it. Before Jane went to bed that night, she thought about cleaning her teeth, but she could still taste those sticky, gooey candies in her mouth, and she didn't want to brush the taste out. So when her mother said,
"Don't forget to clean your teeth, Jane,"
she did. Forget, that is. The next morning, Jane woke up early. She heard music. Loud, rock and roll music, with electric guitars and drums, banging and clanging. It sounded like someone had the radio on. Jane got dressed and went downstairs. Her mother said,
"Turn down that radio, Jane. It's too loud."
Jane started to say,
"I don't have the radio on."
But as soon as she opened her mouth, the music blasted louder. Jane's mother and father couldn't make out one word she said. Jane shut her mouth quickly and looked around. She could still hear the music, but it was quieter again.
"Where's that noise coming from?"
said her father. He listened carefully and followed the music. He went close to Jane and put his ear against her tummy.
"Cut it out, Jane,"
he said.
"Turn that noise down."
Jane tried to say,
"Dad, I'm not making any noise."
but as soon as her mouth opened, the music blared. Jane's father fell over backwards.
"We'd better take her to the doctor,"
cried Jane's mother.
"It sounds like she has a radio inside her."
Jane's mother and father put on their earmuffs and took her to the doctor.
"Jane, turn down that radio,"
said the doctor. Jane started to yell,
"I don't have the radio on!"
but the minute she opened her mouth, the windows rattled, the walls shook, and no one heard a thing Jane said. Jane's father shouted,
"She must have swallowed a radio."
The doctor took an X-ray of Jane. He looked at the X-ray and said,
"I don't see any radio here."
He put on a big smile.
"Okay, Jane. Why don't you tell me how you're doing it, please?"
Jane wanted to say,
"I'm not doing anything."
but she was afraid to open her mouth, so she just shook her head and waved her arms.
"It's coming from her mouth,"
said the doctor.
"Take her to the dentist. I can't stand the noise."
So off they went to the dentist. The dentist said,
"Please stop making that noise, Jane."
Jane tried to say really fast,
"I'm not making any noise."
but as soon as she opened her mouth,
You seem to have a case of loudmouth.
said the dentist. She plugged her ears with cotton balls and said,
Open wide."
Jane opened her mouth and the music roared. The dentist peered inside. She shouted something, but the music was so deafening that no one heard her. She shoved a mirror in front of Jane and pointed. Jane stared. There, on her teeth, was a party in full swing. Jane saw hundreds of strange, tiny creatures on her teeth. Some were dancing, some singing, some were shouting and whirling, and all of them were nibbling at her teeth. Then Jane saw on a molar deep inside her mouth a tiny rock band. They were pounding out the music for the party. Jane hollered,
"Hey, you! Stop that noise!"
but no one heard her, especially not the little creatures. They were too busy eating and partying. Jane slammed her mouth shut. She grabbed a toothbrush, squeezed a blob of toothpaste onto it, and popped it into her mouth. The music stopped. There were screams and shouts. There was yelling and wailing. Tiny voices cried. The noise got quieter and quieter, until at last It stopped. Jane slowly opened her mouth. Not a sound.
See?
She said, grinning.
I told you I didn't have the radio on.
When Jane and her mother and father got home, it was lunchtime. They ate peanut butter and honey sandwiches with a sticky, gooey pie for dessert. It tasted so good that Jane didn't want to brush the taste out. But she did. Brush, that is. She even gargled,
Bee-bop-ba-doo-bop-ba-dee-bop-ba-doo.
sang Jane softly, dancing in front of the mirror. Then Jane heard music. Loud rock and roll music. It sounded like someone had the radio on. Jane went downstairs.
Dad?
She said.
Hey, Dad, where's that noise coming from?
Jane's father opened his mouth, and the music boomed out.
Bebop, doo-wop.